you guys... Blake still hasn't... Blake, will you mess with my green screen? And also crop me a little bit? And then make me slightly larger as well?
None of those things. Live, on time, on point, can be free of charge. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, 224th live edition. A long time coming. High anticipated, never duplicated, often suffocated, underappreciated enough about your program. The only program that features the Nichols Standard, Penny Compton, Townsend, William Bishop, Blake Ever, Stateful, Mediator, Moderators, third round draft pick, main leader, 3 people, 2 Tims, 1 dream, broadcasting's finest train wreck, and 1 knee-wheeling chair to boot. Enough about you as a Corey Media presentation, YouTube, iTunes, all the other tunes, available on Spotify, Anchor FM, available from every coast to every coast. And now...
You also have my aspect ratio wrong. How'd you do that?
That is true. That is absolutely true.
Is it because of the monitor that I'm on? It looks squished. This is why I don't let you host things normally.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Blake is a really good guy in person, Doc, but he's kind of an idiot when it comes to this kind of thing.
Try not to cry a lot. That's what we do.
It's kind of, yeah.
All right, give me just a second. I'll squish you in
me, Daddy. Squish me.
All right, hang on.
I want unsquishing, not re-squishing.
We're gonna crop and then we're gonna unsquish. Okay, you ready?
Okay.
There.
Can you do the filter too?
That's exactly wrong. There we go. There's the unsquish.
Still pretty squisherino to who?
Okay, I gotta bring this down. Where
there's some good COVID info on here. So yeah, we haven't really talked. We talked about the COVID thing a lot, but not in too much opinion. We really looked at stuff and other things. We haven't per se covered it here so much. And today is the first chance we're going to have an expert on, or someone at least who has plenty of experience with the situation. I don't know if you're going to define yourself as an expert, Doc.
Well, I mean,
I would say expert, but I guess experience.
He's at least has expertise in the field, which is
way
more than what William and I are looking at. So most of our time is we're going, did you see that graph? Did you see that article?
Right.
Do you hear about? Did you see about? You know what the thing is? All we really have, the things that William and I can really hang our hat on is wash your hands, right?
Yeah.
Wear a mask, socially distant. There's a lot we don't know.
I want to hear all about all of this and you know what is right and what isn't from a doctor's perspective.
Yeah. So, in chat, tell me about. Give me some feedback on audio as these guys begin talking, and then we'll kind of go from there.
How did you end up squishing me? Right click on me, transform, reset transform. No, that might screw things up.
Yeah, it's gonna. Yeah, I can't do that. I've got to do it as we go. Let's see.
Still really. What aspect ratio monitor? How did you do this?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a long story. Try not to cry a lot. I don't know what to tell you.
Okay, yeah, sure.
All right, I'm going to be unsquishing you as we go. Oh, wait. It's hold down control. Does that do it? A little bit. Okay. All right, so first off, let me just introduce Doc. So Doc is my university roommate a million years ago. And we went to school together. He went off to the Army and / medical school. Went to a darn good medical school. Went to become a doctor. Later on, when I found him again after many years after college, his title was assistant director. From that same dorm room that we were in for 4 years, he went off to medical school, become a doctor, served in Iraq, treated Iraqis, has all this history, all of that. Ends up we meet each other, and then we find out we're in jiu-jitsu, both. He is now at the time, he was a purple belt. Now he is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, medical doctor, veteran, and I am here talking to you scrubs. So that's where we from that same dorm room, our possibilities were open. And one of us chose a really nice path, and the other one is making yuck jokes.
Yeah, what are you doing, Blake? You kind of look like crap compared to Doc over here. Did you do anything? We went to Vegas and won a couple games.
Yeah, a series of unfortunate events.
You married an Australian girl. You had some kids.
Yep, I did all those things. I did all those things, right?
You were in the same space there with Doc. He certainly had a better work ethic than you.
That's right. So, and every time, I mean, he can attest to this. Every time my mother would come and visit, pretty small room, right, Doc? So yeah. It was probably your jiu-jitsu room, your old jiu-jitsu room that we fought in, and two beds, 2 desks, a sink, and that's about it. And we were crammed in this. Yeah. Yeah. And then and my mother would come over and she would look at your side of the room. And then she would look at my side of the room and she would just be so disappointed. Like so completely
just
disappointed.
in you in general.
Yeah. She was always
turn Doc up 30%.
Turn him up?
Yeah, 30%.
Okay.
So right click on Discord and up 30.
Yeah, we'll do. Okay, hang on a second. I'm gonna shut this for a second because I gotta move stuff around.
Stuff.
Move stuff around. Oh wait, never mind.
Forgive
I
Blake.
can do it.
I really should have posted today. Sorry, man.
No, we're good. Okay, and there we go. Okay, we're all good. So here, I'm gonna leave this thing right here. So anyway. So, I guess give us. It was many years ago, Marcus. It was many years ago. And we don't really. It's not. It's shite. It's not really good to divulge your age on the internet. So we'll leave that. We'll leave that out there. So, but anyway,
1994, right? Is when.
What's that?
1994 is when we.
It was a
started.
while. It was a long ass time ago. It was in the 90s. So we did.
You guys are old.
The dawn of the internet age and all of that business. So after school, you and I lose touch. So what happens after school? And tell us a little bit about your medical school, your training, and all of that business.
So after school, I spent about 7-8 months working at a research lab as a research assistant while I was working towards going to medical school. Then in 98, I started medical school. I got a military scholarship to go to medical school. And that's how I really got started in the Army. I was commissioned as a reserve officer and did some training yearly as I went through medical school. And then after residency is when I went active duty into the Army. Now, when I joined the health profession scholarship, at that time, we were relatively safe. It seemed like a really good idea, not much going on in the world. And then, 2001 hit, and all hell breaks loose. And I remember my first year after residency, when I was officially a fully commissioned active duty officer. Everybody was going to Iraq pretty much right from the get-go. Everybody that showed up to the base within 6 months was deploying out to some extent or another. And I remember pretty vividly when I got notice, and I was at home, I received a call from our commanding officer. And, it's not hello, how are you doing? No small talk. It's just, he says, as an officer, do you have any reason why you can't deploy to Iraq next week? I'm like, well, I don't want to go, but so that's pretty much how he told me. He said, well, we have someone that has to come back, so you're going to be deploying in 1 week. So get everything together. And so my wife and I were just newly married. We were newlyweds, about 7 months into our marriage. So that was kind of a shock to have that
thrown longer than you guys were married.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry?
You were gone longer than you guys were married.
Yeah.
Yes, pretty much.
Yep.
So I knew the people that were with me in Iraq longer than I knew my wife as my wife, basically.
Yeah. Right. So how long were you over in Iraq?
I was there, luckily, not as long as some. I was there a little under 10 months, 9 months and some change. Someone had to come back for, at the time they were doing 12-month deployments, which eventually went up to 15 when the cycle was so intense. But I was replacing a officer that had to come back, a medical officer that had to come back for personal family issues. And so I was ending up finishing up his tour, which was the 9 months.
Oh.
But what's interesting about medical corps, I don't know if it's different now. It's been a while back since I was in. At that time, a lot of times you were not with the unit until you got into country. So it's not like I had all this time to get to know everybody, to train together. Basically, you're thrown in the middle of nowhere, and you just have to make do with what you got. And so I remember when I showed up in Iraq, all I knew what base I was at, but I didn't know where the aid station was that where I was supposed to be working at, or the people that I was supposed to work with. Luckily, I was clueless, just looking around, asking people, "Where's the aid station?" And this was a huge base. We were at Cop Spiker in Iraq. That used to be the former, I believe, the kind of like our equivalent to the Air Force Academy for Iraq. So it was a huge base. And when I got there, I was just acting like a fool, looking around, asking people where the aid station is. But luckily, one of the specialists that happened to be there worked at with the optometrist who was right next door to the aid station. So he picked me up and he took me over, and I show up. I'm like, "Here I am," and they're like, "Well, who are you?"
Who are you?
I'm supposed to be here for the next 9 months. So they're like, well, they were happy to have me, but it was kind of an eye opener. Just really no set up to actually getting there. I was just kind of thrown into the fire, so to speak.
You told me a story of was this the one where you got off the plane and you had a certain type of luggage? And was that a different one?
This was when I went to El Paso to train to get ready for Iraq.
Okay.
So El Paso, surprisingly, is very fitting to train for the Middle East.
Yep.
So
it really is insanely.
Yes.
El Paso is where I did pre-mobilization as well.
Yeah. So William's a vet too, by the way.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah.
It's Camp Liberty, Iraq for me, 2011. A little bit later than you.
Yep.
So when I got there, I was pretty much brand new to the military. Most of the officers there were green as you can get, and so when I showed up, everybody had their assault packs and whatnot. I come in, Rambo with my rolling suitcase.
Rolling suitcase, no way.
With my extendable handle.
Yep.
And it's gravel, so it's not exactly like it can roll very well.
Right.
No, yeah, exactly.
I'm pulling that along.
Totally useless.
I remember this colonel looking at me, tracking up. He's like, "Where are you going? Cancun?"
Yeah.
Vacation. What are you talking about?
Yeah. So I promptly threw that in the trash and went to the to the PX and got me an assault pack and tried to look much more proper military.
Classic officer.
Yeah.
On vacation, just chilling.
Yeah.
Probably had a smoothie.
Get a lot of sun over
from
there.
Starbucks.
So got me a lot of sunscreen and.
Right. So what?
Sunscreen mandatory.
Yeah, mandatory. So what would you? So when you got to Iraq finally, and you got to your station, what kind of did you were done with your medical school and you actually starting to treat folks?
Yes, at that point I'm a fully commissioned active duty military officer, medical officer.
Right. So what percentage of Americans versus non-Americans did you treat?
Majority of the time, it was all of them are service members. So I served in 3 locations. So our role was I was at Cospacker is a really huge base. So you have everything there. I mean, you have Pizza Hut and you can get a massage, guitar lessons. When the U.S. goes to war, we go really well in style. Take a gym. I mean, they had a gym over there that was better than probably Gold's Gym.
Really?
Yeah. They even had marathons you could run there.
In Iraq, in country.
In Iraq, yeah, we actually had a marathon.
The gym was like the most poppin' place to be, honestly. Yeah. Like, I mean, when you were off duty, you just went to exercise. I mean, that was
but there's not a whole lot to do, so you might as well get fit.
Get swole, yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's.
So, yeah, I mean, most of the time we treated at the aid station our service members. Now, periodically we would have to go out into country, either with a PA or a doctor that has to come back. Because we get 2 weeks of R&R in between during your deployment.
Yeah. at some point.
And so during those times, we would be sent out periodically to fill those positions. That's when it was really seeing more Iraqi and their civilians.
Okay, there it is.
So at the age, I mean, we really want to keep him back. Basically, is the kind of thing. Like, we don't really want Doc going out too much with us, because when we get someone injured, we want to bring him back to base.
Right.
Treating on the spot is usually an infantry job anyway. So.
Yeah, and our medics are second to none. I mean, so.
Right. So it makes sense.
Right. So you almost never ever left the base.
It's interesting, Blake, that you bring up. Like, you're like, there's a gym. Yeah, like there's a lot of stuff there that you probably like, because there's people on base like selling CDs for us to play in like a DVD player. You know, it's like, because a whole economy starts developing around these bases where they want to sell to the U.S. soldiers, because U.S. soldiers are making money from the USA, right? So very quickly this gap in the market starts getting filled with stuff that we like. Like, there was a calzone shop at Camp Liberty. Where you could get calzones. So it's kind of like not what you expect at some of these bases. Like, so the FOBs, they're awful, but at the bases that are at the airport, they can be pretty. I mean, you might actually have a Starbucks. I was joking about it, but you could have a Starbucks actually at your base, possibly.
Yeah, we had green bean coffee, which was
that's. I think we had that at Liberty too. It was not on my side of the base; it was on the other side of the base. Yeah, we had the green bean piece. I don't know why it was those green beans dudes, but yeah. Nice. So it's a bit weird. It's maybe not what you expect per se at some of these locations, because it is really an economy. Like, there's a lot of Indian workers coming in, a lot of workers from other places coming in as well, because there's like very stable work with good pay there.
Yeah.
It's great to hear Doc talk about this, because other soldiers don't, or other people don't know how it really was at base.
Every service member up to, I think, 105,000 or something like that, it's tax free when you're deployed, so you don't pay taxes on that.
Yeah.
And when you're single, that's a lot.
If you can save if you're not dumb, you got some cash coming in.
Yeah.
Hazard pay as well. So I was out of the wire every single day, and I mean, it's just getting to come back is I feel there's not a whole lot of difference between what Doc and I experienced, besides leaving the wire every day and doing their routes and driving around and stuff like that.
So the FOBs are different. How much time did each of you spend at a FOB, forward operating base, right?
I was never at a FOB.
You're never.
I was only in the middle of Baghdad at Camp Liberty.
Okay, and you almost never left, right? They kept you, Doc, on base all the time?
No. If it was a big mission, we would go out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which those were the worst, because, and I feel for every combat medic. I mean, they were the ones that were really day in, day out, going out by the wire. We would only go out on the bigger missions, and so we would kind of be in a kind of a backward area, and any major casualties would come back to us, and then we would triage them and see if they have to be medevaced or not.
Man, all right. Well, so
you're out of your element here. You're like, yeah. That seems right.
Well, so
we
mostly,
saying anything.
So mostly, is it you had to if you were out of base, you had to you quickly kind of do an ER type triage of, can we do it here, or do we got to get him out of here, right?
Pretty much, and it's almost backwards in a way, because you would think it's critical always goes first, but sometimes you have to, if it's a mass casualty situation, you have to base it on survivability. Who is the most likely to survive? So
my spot there with working with Doc would be evaluating on the spot and try to radio back, let him know what this situation looks like here. I'm talking about how people are ambulatory, what condition they're in, and things like that. And then Doc is trying to make decisions about what to do as they come in. So we're working with together. This CASEVAC is super, super important. We go over it all the time, over and over again. It's like one of the main jobs you're gonna have.
Well, all right. Well, then did you ever have a ton of non-soldiers and folks from in country, like Iraqis or the other side, come in and you had to work on them as well?
Oddly enough, when we were transitioning with the new unit that was taking over the base that we were at, my latter half of my deployment, we were at kind of middle of the nowhere in Muqtadiya, which is kind of close to the Iraq-Iran border. And so that was kind of Wild West medicine. There was nothing there. The local hospital, the Iraqi special forces, that either killed most of the physicians there, the local physicians, and the other local physicians had already left that area. So we were it, pretty much. Wow. So you can imagine, we were less equipped than most clinics, that you would see at probably like CVS or whatnot. But we would have to deal with a lot of trauma situations. So we were doing that transition. We were actually scheduled to do a mass casualty exercise that day. And we actually ended up having a real situation develop because there was a car bomb that went off. And so there we had, I think, 50 or 55 civilians that were in that car bomb. And a couple of my medics were injured. One of my female medics, we had knock on wood. Well, I mean, it's in hindsight, but we did, and not by just, I'm not saying I was great at anything, but we were just very lucky that we didn't lose anybody when I was there. But that particular day, I had a female medic that was pretty badly injured. She had a lot of shrapnel injuries, but I'm pretty sure she made it. But I remember that really hit me harder than most because they're doing the same things, but there's something about her being female. I don't know why. That just made it more harder, I think, for me to see that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had 55 casualties come in, if I remember correctly. And so that was kind of all hands on deck. If you had any medical experience, you have to come to the aid station. And it was just crazy. We were just lining people outside the aid station. So we had 2 helicopters there. They were all ready to go. And then we had to hurry up and try to triage which ones that had to be on the first flight out. And so that ended up really, oddly enough, we were gearing for a casualty exercise, but didn't expect there to be actual mass casualty situation that would go live. So that was my last day as the actual squadron surgeon at that location, was that mass casualty.
Last day?
Yeah. Well, when we transitioned, I had like another week there, but I wasn't the one in charge at that point.
Oh.
The new squadron surgeon was the one.
I'm one day away from retirement. Blake was feeling.
I am one day away from retirement, and here this comes in, right? That's yeah. Wow.
Yeah, VBEDS, this situation with the vehicle-borne IED, it's a scary situation. It's the biggest terror for everybody because you can just put so much explosives on these things, and they'll just put whatever in there, whatever they can get their hands on.
Yeah, ball bearings, nuts, bolts, you name it, they put it in there.
I can fly, I guess. I don't know. Ugh. Oh man! So then, so you went to 3 different bases while you were in Iraq, right? And you were just
call it Wacky Iraqi Land. Can we refer to it as Wacky Iraqi Land? From this now on, that's what I always called it.
Works for me.
Yeah. So you were three places where you had to serve and do things in those 9-10 months, right? Where you were there?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then you come. So then, what was it like for you on your last say week there? Was it as big of a surprise that you were going home, or was there leading up to it? Because you only had a week to prepare to go. Did they just suddenly come to you and go, "Guess what? You're going home. You're going home in 4 days. All right, let's go."
Well, actually, it wasn't that organized, unfortunately. So the same way I got there, same way I came out. So so the unit, they're all geared to leave, but since I'm a medical asset, I'm not really attached to them. So I kind of have to find my own way out. And
what?
So there you go to the building, and every day you look, and it's kind of this really crappy looking, almost like terminal. And I'm looking around, okay, which helicopters are going to be going to Kuwait?
Which is where you get to flight out.
Oh, yeah. Really?
Home is Kuwait.
Yeah.
Oh, so they didn't have an order for you. You leave at 0600 tomorrow, and then
Blake's understanding of the military is so organized.
Here's your papers. I mean, I saw Forrest Gump. He was given papers, and he had to go right then. He had like 2 hours to get his stuff and go, and they had a flight for him, and they had a thing for him, right? So
no, I had papers, and then it took me about 2 weeks to get out.
Oh, you had. Here's your orders. Go home, and you're like, well, okay, well,
yeah,
we worked that out.
I got to Kuwait, and then there weren't any flights from Kuwait. Actually, from Baghdad. I had to go to Baghdad, then to Kuwait. So I went to the Baghdad in the green zone. It was kind of a big area where the major big base is. And so I spent like a week there, just trying to get a flight to Kuwait. So there wasn't much to do. I watched videos and worked out, like William said. And once
Dude, that's all.
Yeah.
It's just like I would make my own workout schedule. That's something I've never done in other parts of my life while I was in Kuwait. Like, because this, God, Kuwait is so. I don't know.
And the videos are of bad quality. You get people walking in the up from their seats, and also
bootleg copies. Yeah.
Were they bootleg copies? Like someone filmed it from a movie theater?
Like, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I finally got out, and I remember when I was on the. Well, first of all, getting out of the Baghdad was a nightmare because there were 185 of us getting in a C-130.
Oh.
Yeah, and you can imagine it's 130 degrees in Iraq at that time, and on the tarmac it's 170. And so we have about 70 pounds of gear on, and we're sitting in the C-130, and it's not like it has air conditioning. I mean, it's just blowing hot air.
That motherfucker.
And there's 185 of us in there. I think it was 185. Anyway, we were packed in like sardines, and at some point I'm like, I'm gonna have a full-blown panic attack here. I gotta get out of here. We're not taking off. So finally, we get up into the air, and I remember landing in Kuwait. And then when I was actually leaving Kuwait for good, that's we were up in the air, and I was looking at the sun. It's like the most beautiful thing I think I've ever seen. It's just everything looks so calm and peaceful. It didn't have to, you're not amped up, like you're not worried about that rocket or someone shooting at you or whatever. You can finally just relax. I'm out of that hellhole, and I can go back home. And I remember when I got back to Texas, and I saw my wife. Texas is not. I love Texas, but not the prettiest place in the world.
It's not.
When I got back from Iraq, everything looked so green. I was just looking around. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so much green around here.
Any amount of green was setting you off.
It's not brown and moon dust, so that powdery sand.
That moon dust. I don't think you can explain the moon dust very well to people. How sticky it is, and how it like gets on everything because it's so fine, especially when it gets wet. This is very similar to my experience. Being on the C-130, I remember it super vividly, mostly because of the pit in my stomach that I felt. I had my entire flick on, sitting in the chairs, and I'm like pushing my flick off my chest to try to get air in between my flick and my chest.
Like talc.
Like talcum powder, yeah.
Beef submarine, by the way.
Like that.
Beef submarine, by the way.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hoorah.
Yeah. Yeah. He's
tilted right now.
Yeah. I'm sure. So anyway, so do you have similar memories of that C-130 we packed in, and did you do the same thing when you left?
The thing that terrifies me the most being packed in the C-130 is the way that the seats were set up. Was that there was like a thing that could be pulled on the seats, and if that safety were to go, you would just roll out the back of the plane. Is how they set it up, and I just remember keep thinking about what it would feel like to have that safety moved and then you just fall out the back. But of course, I mean the doors were closed and stuff like that.
Right.
It was just the C-130 was not as bad as the 12-hour flight home for me, honestly. The 12-hour flight home to the East Coast and then to El Paso again to Demo was way worse.
So, by the way, William not only has a weird thing about flying, but also suffers from pretty severe motion sickness.
Really bad.
Oh, really?
So
yeah, so the combat dive to land in Kuwait that I hated it is the worst.
An extra fun for you, huh?
Right.
Any flying, I had to. So I went to airborne school too. I'm a 6 jump, and every single time I would get motion sick. A huge majority of the time, I just vomit during these situations. And I'm just used to it.
Also, William and I have taken several flights together to go to these conventions and all that. Never, and I say together, meaning we're on the same tube in the plane. Right. We do not sit together because he will barf. Like that's it.
Don't talk to me.
Don't talk to me. He don't want to talk to anybody. So I have him get his seat, and then I pick something way up or somewhere just away. So we may get on the same tube, but there's no we don't want to sit by him. It's better to not look at him or anything to set him off.
Just as long as I keep my head in my lap, I'm mostly okay.
Yep. Yeah. So then one other thing, William. So did you have the same thing when you came home, and were you craving green? What did you crave?
You know, I feel like I don't really have super strong memories of what it was like to get home. I remember being tired and working on my car and fixing it up because it hadn't been driven. And then I don't know. I guess I haven't thought about it a lot. Where I kind of felt like I wasn't home for a long time. I think it took a really long time for me to feel like I wasn't in country still.
Oh.
And I kind of just still treated everything in all situations. Like I would see a pile of rocks stacked up on the side of the road, and I would think it was a trigger for an IED, because what they would do, they would stack up rocks, and then once you got close to the rock, they would be like, okay, now they're close to my target because they're far away and they're hitting their clapper to set off the IED. Like, and so my mindset was for a really long time still as if I was in a combat zone. So I don't think I had that same experience that Doc had, where I felt relief for a really long time.
You know, you bring up an interesting point, because I remember one of my duties when I got back, I was actually part of the Respect Mill program, which was, you know, there were so many suicides and service members when they got back because of, you know, PTSD and other issues. And one thing, I was at a conference and they were talking about when you get back, you can't. The switch doesn't just turn off like that, because you're in that fight or flight, but you're at most that fight at that point.
Yep.
And so you're amped up, and you can't just turn that switch off when you come back. And so, you know, you'll see people have issues with their family because their family doesn't understand that. Their family just sees you as someone that came back, and they weren't there to experience what you felt unless they were service members prior or something like that. And so they react to you almost like you were the same person, but you're not, you know? And so something that shouldn't get you ticked off can. You can, like, the way you say, you know, can you take the trash out? How come you didn't take the trash out? Well, your mind is amped up already. And that's the way someone talks to you in a certain way is enough to just get you going, you know? I mean, you can just explode on your spouse or your kids because you're still in that mode, you know, when you were at war.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's because you're ready for someone to come into your come into your tent and say, hey, it's on. This thing is happening, right? Like always ready for this thing.
Yep.
And it took me a really, really long time to turn it off. And sometimes I still can't.
Yep.
It's still there. Sometimes the switch is still. And you're right. Like, it came out in tiny things all the time, like how I fold my socks and how I want things to be organized and how things need to be set up and how I'm exiting and parking the car and moving around and being in traffic. Even small things could go from, you know, a normal situation to this is a red situation where I'm, you know, 100% my adrenaline is going. A bump in the night very often will make me go from 0 to 100 instantly. Still, after 6 years of being out.
Yeah. But I will say, so in that same regard, all of William's wiring and training has been super useful for both him and us, because like he is heads up way more than I am heads up most times of what's going on around us. He's all checking exits and making sure we got a way out if we need a way out. And he's like, it's
not by choice even, Blake. That's the thing about it, you know?
He's like, check your gear. Where's your bag? Would you know where your bag? Touch
equipment
your
accountability.
Yeah. Equipment accountability, like touch your bags, where you got to get your equipment. And I lost a jacket at one of our conventions. Me remember the San Antonio party, remember. And you were way more pissed off that I lost that jacket than I was. Because
we were having a reaction.
Because
it could have been something else. It could have been your wallet.
Yeah, it was equipment accountability, and I was going, I get a different jacket. You know, it's a $24 jacket. It's not a big deal. But he was more like, all right, we got to get a better handle on our equipment because that losing shit ain't happening, right? So, not on my watch, mister. And I was like, okay, well.
Notice, a lot of soldiers and Marines will not sit with their backs towards the entrance.
Mm-hmm.
They're always
makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah,
360-degree security.
Wait to see someone coming in.
Yep. Yeah. Well, anyway, so then you come home, and when you and I hook up, you've already had a nice little medical career post deployment. You get out of the Army and you're into your practice, and you start out being a civilian doc, right?
You're correct.
And then what was your first kind of employment? Did you get into with a big hospital, or did you have a private practice, or what was kind of your first gig? Coming out of
my gig was so when I was about to get out friend of mine from medical school. He had already started a practice, and so he wanted me to join him. He was like telling me how good things are and how easy it's to get going really fast, and he was a really good guy. So I appreciated that because at that point I only knew military medicine, so I didn't know how the civilian side worked very well. And so when I got out, I joined his practice. So he has a certain kind of standard of how he wants to live, and which involves a lot of working. So he sold it to me like, oh, you can go see your family whenever you want. You see patients in this time frame. The rest of the time you're just enjoying it. Well, in reality, he works a whole lot. So when I joined him, my days typically started at 4 or 5 in the morning, and I would go to the hospital round on patients, and then I would get to the clinic at 8, and then see patients till noon, and then go to the hospital during lunchtime. We did have a 2-hour lunch, but we went to the hospital to admit any patients that needed to come in to the hospital, and then went back to the clinic till about 5, and then I went to the hospital again to admit any patients in the evening. So we were really working probably 4 in the morning till about 8 or 9 at night. And then on the weekends, it was me, myself, him, and then we had a third critical care doctor that rotated a call. On the weekend, you can't, if you work on the weekend every weekend on your patients, you would just burn out. So we would rotate. So I would see everybody's patients in the hospital one weekend, and then my partner would see everybody's patients his weekend, and then the critical care doctor would see her patient for that weekend. Problem was when you rounded on like 50 people in the hospital, which is a lot. And those are not just, people with colds. There's some people on ventilators or in the ICU, and then you have your standard hospital patients. Then I went to what's called an LTAC, long-term acute care facility, where people are good enough to leave the hospital, but not bad enough to go back home for the transition period. And so I rounded those patients. Then I would go to a rehab facility and rounded those patients. So it was probably about 50 patients I would round on the weekends. And then, so it was very inpatient heavy at that time. And what I didn't like, I only did that for about 6-7 months, and I was burned out because, every 2 hours at night, I'd get a call on a patient in the hospital. Well, what do you want to do with this person? Which, not being able to sleep more than 2 to 3 hours in a row, gets to you after a while.
Oh, yeah, for real.
100%.
And not having that separation of home and work too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember my wife one time, she just told me, "You're not here. You're here physically, but you're just kind of blankly looking into space."
And that's you have to really take that on board, honestly, when she says you're not here actively. I think that's really important.
And what's interesting is I think it's serendipitously, I had a patient. She was a very sweet woman. One of my patients, I was leaving after rounding on her, and she just said out of the blue, "Doc, don't work too hard. It's not worth it." She said, "What's most important is your family." And I was like, that was just at the right time to hear that. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to keep doing this. If I kept doing that, I would be able to live a certain lifestyle, but at what expense? I didn't want to look back and my kids wonder, well, where was my dad when I was growing up? He was alive and he was physically here, but he wasn't there for me. Didn't spend any time with me, and just bought me gifts to try to abate his guilt and that kind of thing. So
that one.
Yeah,
that's what ends up happening.
Yep.
So I decided I need to make a change, and that's when I changed to urgent care at the time, which is more shift based. You work hard, but then when you're off, you're off.
Yeah.
No one bothers you.
Right. Yeah, and you're treating and triaging, right? But you send them on to a longer term care doc or something, or do you don't follow them all the way through?
What, in an urgent care setting? No, urgent care settings for the most part are just kind of your bread and butter stuff. Sinus infections, sometimes pneumonia, allergies, or you get, someone breaks a bone or gets a cut, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Anything, you do get more higher acuity things that come in, but we would just triage them and make sure they're stable and then get them on the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Some people do incorrectly assume that urgent cares are emergency rooms and will come to an urgent care for something that should go to an emergency room. But then you have the flip side. A lot of people go to emergency rooms for things that really don't need to be going to the emergency room.
Right. Yeah, that ER. I was trying to explain to my kiddo. He was doing something dumb, and I said, "Son, you're gonna. As much as I would like you to learn this lesson, you're gonna hurt yourself, and then we're gonna go to the ER." And I said, "Son, the ER is not the place you want to be. Like, it's not a fun place. There's all kinds of crazy stuff. Like, you want to avoid the ER at all costs, and so does my pocketbook. So." Get over here and let's talk about what you're about to do and see if we can find a better way. Like I always, the ER stuff, he's like, are we going to the hospital, Dad? I think we went one time for the daughter for some sort of something on the weekend a while back. And right about that time, we stopped because a couple of urgent care things popped up around us that was way cheaper, way reasonable, less trafficked, less people coming in there like crazy. But I remember going in there with the daughter or daughter or son or something, and there was a dude who needed to be in the ER, and he was, number one, puffed, just swole. Number two, as red as William's shirt, and he was having some sort of allergic reaction, either bee sting or shrimp something, whatever. And he was puffy, and I think
could have been peanut butter.
Could have been peanut butter or something. But Ash looked over at him, and Ash goes, "What's wrong with that man?" or something. And I said, "Son, the ER is a place you do not want to be. Like, we need to get out of here as soon as we possibly can. This is not a doctor. This is a different place than the doctor's office. This is a place where people are in real trouble." So we avoid that ER as much as we can, except for ER. I have a nurse in the house. I guess so do you. So we have an ER. We have a pretty good mindset of what to do when to go in and when not to, right? So when you and I hooked up again a kabillion years after school, you on your title, you were your title was assistant medical director.
Yes.
So what did you do at that hospital at that time? What kind of things? What kind of things were you doing for your doctor side, and then what kind of things were you doing for the administrative side?
That side, at that point in time, I wasn't doing as much the administrative. I was still mainly seeing patients. I would help out when the medical director would be on vacation, or certain questions that came up that from a medical standpoint that the staff had, then I would field those. But until I actually became a medical director, I didn't do as much of the administrative aspect of clinical medicine.
Right. So I asked you. I said, "Hey, man, look at you, assistant medical director." And you remember what you told me?
No, what did I say?
Said, "It's just a title."
It's something to put on your door.
It's just a title. I don't know. So then you went on to be a medical director. So what kind of things did you do for the clinic or hospital or whatever it was?
That was doing the schedules, and then all the SOPs, standard operating procedures for the clinic. I would have to review those, and every year make sure that they were up to speed, and it was the standard of care for that time. Mm-hmm. And then, we would do medical chart reviews, just random chart reviews, make sure that everybody that was in patient care was following the standard of care. That's the big thing. Yep. And following evidence-based medicine. No one's doing things just on a whim, just because it feels good. You have to have a good science behind it to explain why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm. It's like show your work.
Show your work.
Yeah.
That's what my teachers always tell me.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the difference?
Yeah. Your proofs need to show all your work. Right?
Yep. Yeah. What's the difference between research and goofing a boot? Writing it down.
This is something I like. This is one of my things.
It's one of William's favorite things. So, so how about did you at the time when you were medical director? So you left being a medical director and went back to just being no more of that before COVID, right? Or did you get caught?
Yeah, I'm still a medical director.
You still are?
Yeah.
Okay. So good. All right. So how much training did you do in medical school and the Army for the Army for pandemic type of stuff? Like they would have, you would have said, okay, there's normal day-to-day stuff, there's severe ER stuff, and then here's global crisis type of thing where congratulations, you're now in the profession where you're kind of in the MVP circle when these things hit, right? So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that's a very short conversation because really didn't get hardly any at all. To be perfect.
See, that was my guess also.
Yeah. No one really, everybody talks about pandemics, but outside of like public health and epidemiology, they don't really train for that per se. You know, you do train for epidemics. Like you expect, flu epidemics, different epidemics, measles, things like that. But on a global scale, no, I mean, realistically speaking, unless you're actually, I can't imagine anyone alive right now, unless you're like 113 or something like that remembers the last pandemic.
Right.
I mean, that's 1918.
Spanish flu, right?
Yeah, Spanish influenza.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not something that occurs very often, but something that we always need to prepare for, just because of you see what happens when we're not prepared.
Yeah, yeah.
But as far as your question to how much training do I have to deal with it, barely any. I mean, other than a brief history lesson on prior pandemics, Spanish influenza and the Black Plague and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was more anecdotal. Here's what happened in history, but nothing like this is what you would do step 1, step 2, step 3.
Right. Which is the difference between your training for the mass casualty situation and the training for a pandemic, where you're like actually going through, because that's what a training would be like, right? What you would want to do, presumably, is like go through the steps that you would actually do on a regular basis and have it part of your routine. But since it's so rare, it doesn't really make sense to fit in when there's like a million other things that you need to be training on.
Yep. Yeah. So
this is what I assumed would be the answer to that is like that's just not a thing that we do.
Yeah. So when you're medical director and you're in charge of what we do when, I would suppose you're in charge of training, right, and making sure everybody has their CEUs and those things up to speed, and make sure you have a trained staff. And is that something that you're kind of in charge of as well?
Oh, that's delegated. I sign off on that, but there's a center director that kind of oversees the human resources aspect of it, which includes credentialing and keeping up with their licensure and things of that nature. And that usually involves having continuing education and doing all that. So I'm not actively involved in it. I just sign off on making sure that all of those I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
Yeah, continuing education unit, I think, a CEU. Is that right?
That's for physicians. It's called CMEs, continuous medical education. But
right.
Yeah.
I think because the wife, the nurse, has CEs or CEUs, and she has to have so many units of continuing education per year or per whatever it is. Right.
Huh, interesting.
So she and they have like a selection that you have to pick from a list, and then some of them are mandatory, but based on what you work on, and some are elective, and then you can go, okay, I need 18 in this year, so I'm going to do and then you do an online. You read about it and you do an online class. That's at least the nurse's experience. So you're medical director, and this pandemic hits. Okay, so you're sitting there in, say, December of this year. What kind of news were you looking at, and did you raise an eyebrow, or was it serious enough yet? What did the medical community do around November or December-ish?
There were rumors here and there. Basically, in December, we heard something going on in China. We heard about one physician that was trying to set the alarm that there was a novel virus that was going around. You may remember there was one that was reprimanded by the government for basically espousing that, saying that it was causing fear and whatnot. And come to find out, he was actually correct. But there were rumors. But we at that time, really didn't concern me much. That's way over there on the other side of the world. And periodically you see things pop up, in the East with SARS and MERS and whatnot. And it's a concern, certainly. But I definitely at that point in time didn't really hit that it was going to be as serious as it was, or as it was coming to be.
Right, because I had heard about the two that I heard about at least recently was the swine flu and the SARS with the bird avian flu type thing, right? So those two, but it never really made a big super splash national. There's some national news, but the news, the national news is more about, okay, let's look at our clicks. So we're going to put some panic in here, and so it's hard to know whether is it click panic or is it real panic, right? So those kind of came and went, didn't make a huge dent in either the workforce or any of that business, or the economy or any didn't shut down any borders because of it. I don't think, not that I can recall, nothing like that. So, at what point did you turn, or what did you hear that made everything turn for you and go, oh, wait a second, we got something?
I think it was late January, early February when cases were rising in the Wuhan province, and you were seeing that how rapid it was increasing. How rapidly it was increasing. That's when it kind of the alarms were starting to go off that, okay, this is becoming serious enough that other countries need to be concerned about this. Even at that point, I don't think a lot of people were thinking that this was going to become a pandemic. It just had the capability of doing so.
Right.
So if you look at COVID, it has everything that makes it a perfect virus to become pandemic worthy, so to speak. It's easily spread. It spreads in asymptomatic people, and third, it's not overtly significantly lethal. What I mean by that is if it's extremely lethal, it'll kill itself out.
Right.
It kills its host, and it won't last very long. But it's more lethal than flu. I mean, the last estimates, I think they said it was 10 times as lethal as flu, so it's lethal enough. But most people don't really get that sick from it, or if you do, you get somewhat ill, but you get over it. And so that's kind of a perfect concoction for this virus to spread like it did.
Right.
So it was about February when I remember telling family members, my wife's family members, they were like, I think this is just the media kind of overblowing things. And I remember telling them, you need to take this seriously. I guarantee you this is going to be a lot worse in a month. Now, I had no idea it was going to be to the extent that it was, but I knew that it was going to spread to other countries.
Right. So I had...
you had identified those traits that made it so that it could spread so well.
Yes.
I don't think I've heard anybody talk about how the lethality is in the right range to be dangerous, because if it was too lethal, it would not be so bad. And far reducing lethality, it wouldn't be so bad as well. But it's in the perfect spot.
Sure.
Describing it as COVID having these appropriate attributes for being a pandemic makes a lot of sense. Obviously, as we look at it, right? This is why it's so terrifying.
Yeah.
And you diagnosed that in January, which I guess people are still out there saying that COVID is not dangerous.
Yeah.
Still, right now.
Right. Right. So then, I guess William and I were sitting in February. We have a convention at the end of February in Boston with 30,000 other schmoes, right? Right, and so
yeah.
So
if I had any hindsight, if I would do any hindsight, I would have not gone to Boston for sure. That was so dangerous.
I guess, but we didn't know what we didn't know, right?
At the time.
At the time, we had plane tickets. We're not rich dudes. We got plane tickets. We got hotels booked. We're in this thing.
You're right.
And
anyway.
And for me, for the civilian in this, not having a ton of understanding about lethality and R value and all of that business at the time. What I took from it was, okay, this is just a bad flu, right? it's just a bad flu season it's going to get. Well, even if it's more lethal than the flu, it's still the flu, and I've gotten the flu a couple times, right? Maybe every 4th year I'll hit one or something like that, and I'll get a bad one, and then I'm off for a week, and then we're all done. No one I know dies. No one. It doesn't make national news. There's not really any statistics that the news shows me. I don't get any headline graphs about it, other than other than in 2016, I think I got it. I got the flu, and I think by then I think Trump had already won the election in November. I think I got it, and then the joke was, "Yeah, I got the flu. Thanks, Obama." It was because the "Thanks, Obama" meme was out there.
Still
right?
works. Still works.
Yeah, and I guess yeah, we're in 2019. Thanks, Obama. He's been out of office
2020 at least Obama still too. So your concern was much higher than mine at this time.
Right.
I was not concerned at all.
I was looking at it and I was going, okay, we're gonna go there. We're probably gonna get sick. We're gonna see a bunch of masks there. William and I are probably gonna get sick coming home because it's a bad.
Any masks at all?
It's a bad. Oh no, I saw them.
Did you see masks?
You remember my statement? And you know who had it right? Who had it right? I didn't see any other than cosplay. There's lots of cosplay, right? There, okay. It's a gaming convention, Doc. It's a bunch of nerds. But I saw everybody who was non-US, like the Japanese guy we met. Everybody from Asia who was coming over from Asia. All of them had masks. All of them. Mm-hmm. So there was remember we met a guy from that Japanese magazine. Had a mask on. He was a Nintendo guy. He was coming over like he had Nintendo magazine or something. He was a magazine guy, and he was the one that had cameras on front and back, and he had a little chest thing on. And we were asking about his camera. He was masked up. He was from Japan. A couple other folks from I think it was a couple of Thai people. They all had masks on. So everybody, I mean, this is where a lot of people from all over the world meet in here, like a bunch of Europeans, all of this stuff. None of the Europeans had masks. None of the Americans had masks. Everybody from Asia had them. And I went...
I like this commentary because I do really believe that it's a cultural thing to wear these masks.
Absolutely.
I feel like USA does not accept it culturally.
Absolutely,
they just don't.
Yeah,
and
it's
maybe
horrible.
Europe as well. I'm not sure so much about.
Right.
But there's a lot of Asian countries, and I think maybe even India is a little bit more accepting of the masks.
I don't know, man. So I get home, and actually I leave that convention a day early, March 1st. We were supposed to come home March 2nd.
And you were pretty spooked when you were leaving, by the way.
And I had sniffles. I started feeling weird Saturday night when we were hanging out with Glurms and Diz, right? And then it was suit night. Come home, and I wake up early. I get breakfast, and my flight was Monday. I'm on Sunday morning. My flight was Monday, and I had about 25 hours before takeoff. And the thing is, I lose money if I reschedule or cancel 24 hours. So I had 1 hour to make a decision of do I go home today or do I go home early? And I said, all right, I feel bad enough. I'm out of here. So I took off. Because what I was seeing on the news, I did some Googling for about 15 minutes, and I saw one guy saying one guy was quarantined in a Marine barracks for 2 weeks. Some other place. There was someone in New York was quarantined. L.A. they're quarantined. It was right March 1st. It's just starting to come over. People getting quarantined. And I'm going, I don't want to get quarantined in Boston by a bunch of Marines. I'm out of here. Like, I'm gone. So
that's what he told me too. He was like, I don't want to get quarantined.
I don't want to get quarantined. Okay. And so I basically like wrapped my face up in my jacket and I just went home. I try not to look or breathe or anything. Anything. I basically tucked my face into my jacket and flew home. Right. I just stayed to myself, got home. I came home sick. I was off work and I had to tell my bosses, hey, guess what? And the news is breaking right now. It's first week of March. I said, guess what?
Yeah.
I traveled, and I'm sick. And they went, oh, stay home. So I
don't
said,
come toward us.
Yeah, don't. So I worked from home for a week, and I had, I'll tell you, man, I had like 5 of the 7 symptoms. Right? It is, fever, coughing, runny nose, sore throat. body aches, fatigue, and I don't know one other one. I'd never had fever, and I never really had body aches, but I was tired. I'd just done a convention, right? Turns out later on, I got a COVID blood test to see if I had it back in March. You remember this? Yeah. So somewhere around May, I'm trying to. It's okay. So here's the thing: is I went in March and I said, okay, I'm sick right now. Can I get a COVID test? So I'm Googling everywhere. And they're going, so I call up my doctor and I said, hey, I'm sniffling and sneezing, all this other business. And they said, but are you dying? And I said, no, I am not dying. And they said, good, stay home, try and get over it.
Yeah.
And I said, but like, I think I'll give blood. I'll be a part of the experiment if I can get a diagnosis. No. Are you dying? And I said, no, I'm not dying. And they said, good, you're staying home. We're not doing it. Good. I said, okay, I'm staying home. I'm not going to be part of the deal. So that was March. May, I get some email from some company that says, hey, we're setting up clinics in your area. One of them is an outdoor and one of them is an indoor. And you can go get a COVID test for $60. And if you're having symptoms, you can get the back of the nose swab with the 6-foot-long Q-tip.
Yeah.
Or
ouch.
You can get the antibody.
It's a scraper more than a Q-tip.
Yeah. The antibody test, which is the blood test, right? To test if you have had it, if your body has developed antibodies. So they said, look, if you're having symptoms now, don't get it. Don't get the blood test because you won't have developed antibodies now. If you're having symptoms, get the nose. But if you've had the symptoms and you just want the antibody test, then come in and we'll do a blood draw. So I go in. This is May. Everybody's distancing. Everybody's masked up. I'm chilling there. And the nurse, as she wipes me down again, sticks a needle in, starts drawing the blood, and as she is piercing my skin, breaks into the longest and most violent coughing fit in history. And she starts coughing. As my blood is exposed, she starts into this violent coughing fit. And I'm going,
a needle.
what are you doing?
You have it already.
I'm like, well, I guess we're doing this the second time, So she's going, excuse me, I'm so sorry, sir. I'm so sorry. And she's coughing like crazy. And so I'm going, I don't know. So she manages to get over it, buttons me up, and I run. Like I sprint out of that place, get out, and run away. Turns out they send off the blood to someone. It's 48 hours. They sent me back an email. It was Thursday. I got an email on Saturday. Negative. No COVID antibodies. So apparently,
you got it now, sucker.
Back in March, I did not have it. Apparently, I don't know. It said it was accurate to 90%. It was the antibody test.
So
right?
1 out of 10 times it's wrong.
Yep.
I mean, that's kind of high.
Listen to Doc. That is kind of high, right? How
20% inaccurate.
Okay, right. 20%. Yeah, as high as 20%. So it's not a good test.
What about the test at the time? What's the accuracy?
Yeah, what's the accuracy on the swab?
Yeah, that's 80%.
The swab is 80%. Yes, no. What about the antibody? Is 90% accurate?
That I don't have a specific. I think that sounds about right.
Okay. Yeah. They
said the antibodies is that you could lose the antibodies as well by the time you've had testing too.
Yeah.
Problem is these tests are not, you have sensitivity and specificity. It has to be positive and positive people. It has to be negative and negative people.
Right.
And the positive part, it's, at best, I think they're saying about 20% on the swabs. So you do 100 of them, 20 people, you don't catch the positive case of COVID.
Look at this perfect pandemic, right?
Yeah.
It's the great R value, the perfect lethality, and it's so new. The testing is super sketch, right?
And it kind of takes 2 weeks to get the result now, pretty much. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're over it by that.
You're either over it or
test.
Right. Right. But my blood test was 2 days, and they sent it back to me Saturday, and I tested negative. And
I also had the in-nose test when I ended up in the hospital for a very bad flu, is what it was apparently.
Right.
Is what I was told. And I got a negative also, and I call BS on my negative test. Okay. because I definitely feel like you and I, Blake, caught it while we were in Boston for sure. Like the coughing that I had, all the I mean, saying I have all the symptoms. Yeah, I know the symptoms are very similar to flu. There was one symptom that I found. All right, I don't know if this is a thing that we've noticed. Is like since it's a blood cell thing as well, COVID. There was an effect that I had on parts of my body where it started like scabbing over and flaking off. I've seen this online. I don't know if this is even true or not, but I had that, and it's not a normal flu thing. I'll have to show you.
You know what we need to do is we should have a doctor or somebody on to ask about these symptoms and what is really going on. So
they always find new symptoms, it looks like, for this, right? But three symptoms that we've consistently shown to be very likely COVID are fever, cough, and shortness of breath. Those three kind of seems to be the gold standard symptoms for COVID. Now, it's granted, you have the other symptoms. Rash actually, and conjunctivitis, that does occur in some because of the inflammatory aspect. You know how children are having the Kawasaki type symptoms, and you have the coagulopathy. Well, that's.
I didn't understand that. Sorry, could you?
So
in normal people.
Well, I wanted you to cover that what's going on with coagulopathy, because I heard this on a science-related podcast, and I wanted to ask you about it. What's going on with that? Because the coagulopathy that's going on with the hemoglobin is super interesting. So if you could tell us what we think the virus is attacking, if you know about it, and then what symptoms that would cause.
So the coagulopathy is where the blood has a high propensity to clot, and the exact mechanism is not known, but what we think it's due to inflammation. So, like for instance, like Kawasaki disease in children, that causes inflammation in the blood vessels, and because it has inflammation in blood vessels, the blood cells tend to have a higher chance of clotting. And so you actually, like in Kawasaki disease, in children like 5 and under, you can have heart attacks, believe it or not.
Dang.
Because
of the, okay.
Yeah. So so that's what you're seeing in some people. Like that one, I think that Broadway actor that ended up dying recently, he had a pretty bad case of COVID where he lost his legs, and then he had his lungs fail on him. He needed a lung transplant, and he ultimately passed away. But he had that to a really severe degree.
Wow. So, yeah, they were there was an ER. The one I listened to, I think it was it was like scabs inside the blood vessels. Yeah, that sort of thing. It's
inflammation.
Yeah, it's clotting, etc. And so
that's why I think that I had COVID, because I had that on my feet. I had this weird it looked like dead skin coming off, and I linked a thing to it in chat. For this, I've never experienced it before. I never had trouble with my feet before. I thought it was like something totally unrelated, but I had it right as I was sick. This COVID toe thing. This is my test came back negative, but the COVID. No, I'm convinced. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Weird.
What I would say to that, though, is because of the kind of high inaccuracy of these tests, you may not be wrong.
Right.
When it comes to medicine, the test never should be the ultimately defining factor. It's medical acumen. So you go by, you're like almost a detective in a way. You go by what the signs and the evidence shows, and then you use tests to either corroborate your thinking or to rule things out.
Okay.
But you don't generally just rely on a test to rule in or rule out something completely.
That's really interesting to say that, because I had never thought of it that way before. But now when you say it like that, it seems obvious.
So here we go. So this is my thought about doctors, and I have no idea why the society today is so dismissive of expertise. I have no idea. The reason why doctors earn such a good paycheck is not because there is an AI that can diagnose and judge, or an AI that can diagnose somebody in WebMD and you can check out these symptoms. What we pay doctors so big money for is judgment, right? That's what it ultimately does, and that's kind of what he's saying is, look, a test is one piece of data. Some in the case of something like I don't know. What's an example of a really good high accuracy test that is like you can just about hang your hat on a positive one that's a really good one?
Very good test.
What's that?
Strep test.
Strep.
Rapid strep.
Strep throat, right? That's a great example of a really good one. If it's positive, yeah, you pretty much got it. It's repeatable. It's been consistent. It's cheap. It's had the million times run and million times over. It's an older type of condition that the medical community has just run through the ringer so many times, right? And it's a good one that everybody can go, okay, we have a good damn test, right? High accuracy, easy to run, very quick, all that business. COVID test is not a good test, right? It's very, very new. It's super early in the process, high inaccuracy. It's going to miss a lot. It's also got a 2-week window to get the results back. So lots of problems with that test. And the reason why you want good medicine, good medical doctors is what he was saying, that medical acumen is judgment. That's why WebMD alone will not suffice for a doctor, right? You need judgment, right? Let me just prop up your profession there.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, that's a big takeaway for me, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and so yeah, it would be part of your doctor's complete profile. So you would get a flu test, maybe it might be positive for flu. His doctor, so William's doctor, also said, all right, it's likely not both. Usually the thing is, no, it doesn't. You usually don't get flu and COVID at the same time, which was what they said to William, right?
I almost died, though. Okay, listen.
I know. Are you dying? Yes, probably. Okay,
no,
come in.
I wasn't dying. I mean, I did pass out.
Yeah.
I did test positive for flu as well.
Right.
So,
right.
Well, I think that's one thing I learned, I've been practicing medicine now, 18 years or something like that. And you can't ever say nothing is impossible.
Right.
Yeah.
I've said that before, and I've been wrong when I've said it. Because, like, for instance, I've had patient that was positive this was before COVID, for strep, for mono, and flu at the same time. No one would expect you to have the trifecta. But I've actually had that tested positive for all three. And they were sick as a dog. But, yeah, so, I mean, is it unlikely? Yeah, I'd say very unlikely that you would have both, considering both can be pretty bad and lethal in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
But I would imagine there's some scenarios where you could have both.
Yeah.
If you're the unlucky person that happens to get exposed to both illnesses. I mean, think about coming fall. This fall is very scary to look at because flu season is about to kick in a couple of months. And if COVID it's going to linger around. We don't have a vaccine for it. So we will have to deal with both at the same time. And I can only just imagine what kind of nightmare that's going to be for the medical infrastructure trying to deal with both those illnesses at the same time.
So, as a hospital, I guess manager, what did your hospital do in March, April, May, June? How take us through the months and what state is the hospital in now? We're not going to mention any locations or names, so you can tell us honestly. Don't think about giving your hospital a bad name necessarily, but right. But what were the phases by month that you guys did, and how did you prepare for it? Were you caught blindsided? What did you do a good job on, et cetera?
Well, I can only speak from the clinical standpoint because I don't do the hospital aspect anymore. But just from my colleagues and from what we were going through, the big issue was, one, how rapidly this was spreading, just how quickly it was spreading. That was shocking. And how much the lack of infrastructure that we had. As you saw in the news, there was just a severe lack of PPE. There were no masks, gowns. Masks that you typically would use once. I mean, it's not standard infectious disease protocol to wear these masks over and over again.
Right.
That would be so beyond the outside of the norm. But that's where it came to very quickly, that we could not feasibly do that and be able to sustain taking care of people. And we would essentially run out of all of our equipment within a few weeks. And at that point, I can only imagine how badly things would have gotten, because then, hospital and clinic staff would all start getting sick, and they'll eventually get to a point there's no one to actually treat the people
Right.
that are coming to be treated. And so we went from initially wearing the mask, typically using it once and throwing it away, to then using it for the whole day. That kind of became the next thing. And then it became, you need to wear it for a week. For 5 days you have to wear it.
Same mask.
Yeah, same mask. And
Very
then,
quick.
yeah, they do. And I mean, they get sold very easily. I mean, if you just talk normal talking, and you get moisture inside the mask. So
Yeah.
And so we went from that to the next phase was basically you wear the mask for a week and then you save it and let it dry out, and then you re-wear it in 4 weeks. And so you would go through the cycle of wearing one mask, saving it, and then wearing it 4 weeks later.
Ugh.
And then people were trying to reuse their their gowns. Those are flimsy. You can't reuse those.
Yeah.
People are trying to spray them down with Lysol. I mean, I saw some poor nurses that were trying to use trash bags, with duct tape to try to create their own PPE. It was a nightmare, and it's really still is. I mean, it's mind-boggling that we have the capability that we do in this country. I mean, the wealthiest country that ever existed.
Ever.
And we can't. Yeah, I mean, without a doubt.
Yeah.
There's no second place that's even close. And we were in that scenario, and still are. I mean, we haven't changed really.
Yeah.
It's terrifying, honestly, to hear. I knew this, right? We knew the PPE was a big problem. To hear it from someone who's actively working in a hospital where.
Yeah.
God.
So now what has gotten better since it first kind of hit? So what happened talk about the hospital or the clinical occupancy or the hospital occupancy in your area. Was it, because what I heard from, unless you were in a hot spot, something like New York, most other places, hospitals were empty, because what they didn't want to do was they didn't want to get welcome Bold Viking Raiders. We're on with an actual doctor talking about COVID. So an actual doctor, we know one. So at some point, it was hospitals are overrun, and we saw the freezer trucks acting as mortician trucks, taking people to the city morgue, right? And then on the other side of the country, or in middle America, empty hospitals, no elective surgeries, none of that business. They were having to lay off and furlough staff because we were just saying like, look, if you have some sort of knee surgery that you have to get, hold off. Don't go to the hospital right now because it's a pandemic, right? So all of these other things, all of the stuff that makes hospitals money and keeps people employed, gone. Let's make sure it's COVID and be aware of COVID, right? So how did the hospital occupancy or maybe your clinical attendance happen over time, right?
Yeah, so you bring up a good point. So, at that time, New York and the Northeast was where the epicenter was, and everywhere else was kind of in different phases depending on what part of the country you were in. Texas at that time, we were not really too bad off considering, but in April, we saw. In my clinic, we saw probably a 40% decrease in just volume. Yep. And I know a lot of hospitals did too, because like you said, they stopped elective surgeries. Now, hospitals are not a big money maker anyway. It's not a real business model per se, in of itself. But elective surgeries are how hospitals really make money.
Right.
So you can see all the COVID patients you want that come in, but that really doesn't generate a lot of revenue. It's the knee surgery or the hip surgery or all these elective surgeries, or casts, things of that nature. That's not all casts. Some casts are obviously emergent, but these procedures are what pays for a lot of things in the hospital setting. And so everything was COVID based. In like here in Texas, we didn't have like tremendous amounts of COVID. It was enough to be alarming, but not not to like the levels of New York, certainly.
Right.
Recently, we've seen, well, before these past few weeks, probably I'd say before Memorial Day, things were starting to ramp up. Elective surgeries were coming back. People were kind of going back to their normal way of things. I mean, as close as you can in scenario. But then I'd say from Memorial Day on is when things just started ramping up. And from then on, it was just kind of pedal to the metal. Things are getting worse again.
Wow. So what's the state now? Is it like what percentage are you seeing? Are you guys overrun with COVID, or is it 70%, or is it a small minority, or?
In my case specifically, we don't see a lot of COVID because we send those on to get tested at outside facilities. So we don't see a lot of that. But I know from in the hospital settings, they're at 200 plus percent where they were. So at this point in time, the hospitalizations have gone up, so have intensive care unit admissions, and then unfortunately fatality. Good news, if there is a good news to this, I think we've learned a lot and we're getting better at treating it, or keeping people alive.
Right.
So you're not seeing this exponential growth in deaths as of yet. Hopefully it stays that way. But as with anything, there's a lag time to this. I heard one physician describe it. It was a very good way to describe how when you look at the numbers of COVID right now, it's not real time. It's like looking at a star. When you look at a star, you're seeing light from years ago.
Yeah.
You're not seeing that star as it is right.
Millions of years ago, that star was that color, and it's just now getting to us, right?
Yeah. So same thing with COVID. What you see now, you'll see the effects 2 weeks from now, roughly speaking, because most people get symptoms about 5 to 10 days after exposure. And so if you're seeing, unless something significantly changes, what you see now, it's going to be worse 2 weeks from now.
Man.
Yeah, I think it's something to keep in mind as we look at stats, because I think some people can be lulled in a sense of security by the current stats, and then they're assuming it's going to go down, but it might have already been. This 2 weeks was the worst 2 weeks.
Yep.
And I think it's important to keep in mind.
So what kind of new things are on the docket for treatment? So when we first got a bunch of cases in New York in March, it was they're having trouble breathing, put them on a ventilator, and like 80% of people on a ventilator died. We didn't have we didn't know about treatment. We heard Orange Man come out and say, like, look, there's this hydroxychloroquine, there's some zinc, there's all this other good stuff. You should just go. Just chug this stuff because it's great. You shouldn't chug this stuff, right?
What do you got to lose, right?
Well, what do you got to lose, right? So,
Lysol.
Yeah, we heard a bunch of stuff in March that was just, hey, we're grasping at straws trying to find something that works. We've got 3 months now and lots more cases. Have we made any advancements on, hey, this thing seems to work, and it's a direction. Now, what we should say is that everything that Doc says needs to be verified by a peer-reviewed study, clinical trials, all of those sorts of things. But before, no one should go out and necessarily take action on any of these things. But doctors, what they're trying to do now is they're doing what they're doing. They're following evidence-based medicine. They're relying on each other and others' reports of what is working, and doing things that are risk appropriate. Saying like, look, I've heard in these types of cases this is working, and this patient's on the road to a bad place, so it's as low risk. We're gonna try this thing over here and see if it works. One other thing, like the coagulopathy, if they start to have that, they start to have dropping O2 sats. Blood thinners seems to be one that they're putting people on when they come in for COVID, because blood thinners, right? Because of that coagulopathy that they're coming in with. And the report was from this ER doctor was, you put that little O2 stat on, for example, on your finger, and O2 stats are like in the 90% range is good, right? If you're like 60s and 70s, you're fin to pass out, bro. Like you're usually gone. Okay. Now COVID rolls around, And there's people who come in and they put this O2 stat on their fingers, and they're reading in the high 50s, low 60s, but they're chilling. They're on their iPad. They're doing
happy hypoxia, they call it.
What's that?
Happy hypoxia.
Happy hypoxia. Right. So they're just chilling. They're not even no big deal, no problemo, and they're talking
so
to
you.
You
realize they have shortness of breath effectively.
Well,
they don't even realize
it's something. It reads the O2 level in your blood, and so what they're doing,
inflammation maybe.
what doctors in some places are doing is putting people on blood thinners because it's the hemoglobin. Some people have the hemoglobin reaction, all that other scabbing stuff. That's one example of a group of doctors who are trying some things, trying to make some headway on treatment. So, Doc, do you have anything, if you want to elaborate anything on that coagulopathy thing or anything else that seems to be working or good news in the treatment realm?
Well, I mean, I probably don't have anything new to add that people haven't heard about in the news, I would say. I mean, you had the hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and zinc, which you had mentioned. There's a Ford study that's showing, it's a retrospective study, so it's looking back. So those aren't the best studies, obviously, double blind, where you give it to people, you don't know who's getting it, and then you see how it affects them is the best study method. That showed some promise with hydroxychloroquine, but then you have studies from NIH, University of Minnesota, Oxford University, World Health Organization, that show no benefit with hydroxychloroquine. So I would say, I mean, no one can really say definitively without some reservation on how accurate their information is, whether hydroxychloroquine works or not. But right now, there's more studies that show it doesn't work. Right. So I would not go out and just try to start taking this. Definitely not prophylactically.
Right.
But right now, let's say the jury is kind of leaning towards it's not beneficial. There is the remdesivir, the antiviral drug, that has some promise, but that's an IV medication. There's no pill for it. It can only be administered with an intravenous method in a hospital setting. They are thinking about looking into an aerosol intranasal form of that. But that has yet to be seen if that's going to come to fruition. And then obviously there's a ton of countries that are working on a vaccine. This is probably one of the largest concerted efforts in the world on one particular illness or disease to try to find a vaccine. Problem is normal vaccines come to market after about 10 years.
Right.
We're trying to do it in 6 months to a year, maybe 18 months. You have to take a lot of leaps and on faith on that. We would not even be talking about some of these vaccines this early on, if this were a normal situation.
Right.
It'd be years down the road, when we go to clinical trial phase, years beyond or when they start producing this stuff. But now they're just, if they have a promise, these companies are told to just start mass producing it, because if it even has the smallest chance of working, we're going to start administering it, or attempt to, and not really knowing if it works or not. And unfortunately, these companies, a lot of these companies will make a ton of this vaccine, and they're going to lose money on it.
It's going to flush. You got to flush it if it doesn't pan out, right?
Doesn't work. Yeah.
So it's kind of sad that really we're grasping at straws. We're basically throwing rocks in the dark and trying to hit something and see if something does hit.
Yeah,
and
and
it's not like it's definitively hitting. If it even comes remotely close, we're like jumping on it. Okay, let's give this a shot. Maybe it's going to work with a shot.
Right. Yeah. And I don't envy the medical community on this, because they got the entire planet is looking to basically these clinicians who are doing all this research work, this antiviral research work, and going like we're counting on you.
Faster.
Yeah, work faster. You gotta come through for us.
I mean, it just speaks to how terrified everyone is about like how big a deal it is, and how taking these leaps is.
And one thing you have to think of is also, we may not ever find a vaccine. not all of the diseases can we find a vaccine for, right?
Right. Yeah, there's no guarantee. There's absolutely no guarantee, right? And there's also no guarantee that. Do you have any good studies that show that you get it once a year and you're done, like the flu, or is it a repeatable type of thing, or what is the evidence showing for repeat contact?
We don't know. So,
damn,
being a novel coronavirus,
that is not what I wanted to hear. Okay, I'm gonna tell you that right now.
Right.
People that develop antibodies, we don't know how long they last.
Right.
If you look at majority of diseases, at some point the antibodies wane. That's why you need a booster. Even with diseases that have now those diseases vary. Some are 2 years, some are 5 years, 10 years. So we're in brand new territory with this coronavirus. We don't know. First of all, if you develop antibodies, does it protect you against it? Can you get reinfected, or do you protect you from reinfection?
Right.
It does. How long does it protect you? How long does it wane?
Or if you develop antibodies, could you only develop a certain few, and then you get a cytokine storm, where the first time you get this is an interesting phenomenon where you get an infection, you're infected with a virus, and then you get some antibodies, but it's not quite enough. And then the next time you're exposed, there's a fight between your antibodies and the virus, and your immune system gets in there, and it messes you up bad. Right? Did I explain a cytokine storm?
Yeah, that can happen.
Yeah. So there's that. We don't know. And those are definite possibilities of how many. Of what he was saying is, if you develop antibodies, how much do you develop? How much does a typical patient is? Is it enough to protect you? If it's not enough to protect you, if it's too little, maybe it just doesn't protect you a second time, or if it's right in this little sweet spot, there's bad news for your second lap, because your immune system's going to get triggered, and it'll put you down. Man, it's rough, right?
Now, on the flip side of that, there is some good news, I'd say. So the theory, now they've been looking into the theory of why do some people get COVID but don't have any symptoms, they're asymptomatic, or those that have very mild symptoms. And some of the theories I've heard on that is that having other coronaviruses might give you some protection.
Right. Normal cold is a good example of coronavirus, right?
Yes. So if you've had possibly a coronavirus that's somewhat similar to COVID-19, you might be somewhat protected. And in some cases, you might be asymptomatic. You're just a carrier of it, but you don't develop any symptoms to it. And in the big picture of things, most people will get this and either have no symptoms or very minimal symptoms, or you'll get a little sick and you'll get better. The problem is that small percentage where it will wreak havoc. It'll cause significant symptoms, lead to hospitalization, lead to intensive care, or even death. Now, in the big scheme of things, the number is very small, but that small number with 6 billion people is a large number.
Yeah, right.
That's the problem. And then it's a small number until it affects someone you love, or it affects you. Then it's not a small number. It's 100%.
Right.
And this is why we needed the PPE, to try to reduce this amount as much as we possibly can.
Right. Yeah, so I've been flashing up on the screen, if you've seen this, Doc, I've been flashing up on the screen CDC stuff from the last 2 or 3 months. It's just been little bulletins with data of, there was death rate by nation, and the difference is death rate by occupation was an interesting one, where professionals, those who are inside an office, or high skilled type of or high education type of professions, indoors and all of that, affected way less than something like a manual low skill labor. That was a chart that was just up a minute ago. But if you look at, let's just take the people who are COVID, who are died from COVID, what is their profession? Then that was that chart. And then a bunch of it is preventative. Some of it is symptoms that have just been rolling. I have it change every minute. There's like 20 of these little things that we're rolling through. So hopefully you guys have been seeing some of these stats. And there's also one of these stats that is affected by age. And and the 80-year-olds and over, but there's a giant spike. Like it's something like 20% something hospital / fatality rate. So age is a really big factor in all of the in infection, or I guess symptom and hospitalization rate and death rate, not necessarily infection rate. But all right, any other good news that you can paint
Please.
for us, because we could use some if you've got any for us.
Well, I would say this is a good news if it's done. Okay, so everybody wants this magic pill or magic medicine, but we have seen from what we learned thus far on this virus, it's actually somewhat controllable if you do certain few very basic things. If you socially distance, if you wear a mask, and well, if we can contact trace and test.
Yep.
Now, the masking and social distancing is, you would think, pretty easy, but there's been a lot of politicization of the especially the mask.
Right.
And I've heard an interesting theory on that. I think it has to do with control. Remember when COVID came out, everybody was dying to get toilet paper for some reason.
Yeah.
So that obviously really makes no kind of sense on why people get toilet paper. But it was theorized that it was a level of control that people had. If I have toilet paper, then I'll be okay because it's something I can manage and control on my own. Same thing with a mask. If you're telling me I have to wear a mask, you're taking that control away from me. I don't have the option of whether to wear it or not. I don't know if that's valid, but I think to a certain extent there is that to the human psyche that.
Yes, I agree. So I heard some interesting things from a sex education worker, and they were saying that trying to convince people to wear condoms is very similar to trying to convince them to wear masks. Where the moment that you try to shame them or force them to do something, that's when they start really pushing back against the idea of doing it. And it's really about an education thing more than, hey, you have to do this thing to make it super effective. But since we're in a situation where if you're not wearing a mask, you could be killing another person, these mandates are coming out that you have to do this. And yeah, I think you're right, Doc. There's a lot of pushback on that because of the control factor.
And the way it came out was an issue too. At first we were told it's not effective for the general public.
Right.
Now,
there's a lot back and forth.
Yeah. Now, some of that had to do with, I think, they were trying to reserve PPE for healthcare workers.
Right.
There was that aspect to it. But that mixed messaging early on, I think, kind of had a detrimental effect on this. And then, obviously, leadership refusing to wear a mask and not making it a big issue is a real significant problem. Yeah, and the other thing, and testing is real crucial. Now, the problem is, Pandora it's out of Pandora's box at this point. It's too late to trace. There's too many infections going on. Tracing and testing is good, I think, no matter when you do it, but tracing is important when your cases are low. So, South Korea was used as a early model. They learned from when they had an issue with MERS a couple of years ago. They got blindsided, and they decided it's not going to happen again. As soon as the DNA came out for COVID-19, they had their companies, I think 6 different companies, if I'm correct, start working on testing, on how to test it 2 weeks after that DNA came out. And so they ramped up right from the beginning. The other thing is they got tracing down very early on. Now, it's draconian. We would never work in the United States, but basically, from what I'm told, once you tested positive, they would use cell phone data to find out where you've been over the past 2 weeks and find every single person that pinged to in that cell tower or wherever they were, and find them and have them tested. In addition, they would use your debit card and credit card data to find out where you were and look for people that were in those areas up to 2 weeks before you tested positive to trace. So that's very aggressive tracing. Yeah. So if you trace and find all these people that potentially have it, and the problem obviously is the asymptomatic carriers,
right?
The ones that you spread it with. So that's how you can find those when the when the number of people that are infected is low. But when the infection volume it is as it is now, there's no way you can reasonably trace. You can't do that. There's no amount of money in the world that's going to be able to do that. So
you'd bring everybody in. You'd bring every human being, right?
Yeah, essentially you would have to test the whole country,
Right.
And on a regular basis too.
Yeah, once a week, right? It'd be a once a week test or something, right?
So now all we have is essentially face masks and social distancing is all we're basically left with at this point to minimize this. The CDC director said now, and I agree with him on this one. If 95% of people wore masks, in about 6 weeks we would get this under control to a manageable level. If you just would wear a mask, I mean, it's not really a lot to ask to wear a mask. I mean, I've had patients tell me they can't wear a mask for medical conditions, but I mean, I've had COPD patients that are able to wear a mask and their oxygen levels are fine. It's certainly uncomfortable. No one likes to wear a mask. Right. Even doctors don't like wearing masks. I mean, imagine it's like surgeons that do neurosurgery on them. They're in masks for 8 hours. You would have all of them dying if that was the case. I understand if you're on oxygen all the time, there are certain conditions where it could increase your risk. But for the majority of people, if you simply wear a mask, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, you might have your political reservations on why you don't want to wear it, but if you look at the greater good, I mean, people talk about my right to not wear a mask, but what about the person next to you's right to stay healthy?
Yeah.
The mask is not only to protect you, but it's to protect the person around you.
Right. Yeah, it's both and, right? It's not just about you, and it's about the spread of this thing, because, as you said, most of us are going to be either mild or asymptomatic carriers. Most of us, like that's statistics that's been shown everywhere, right? Regardless of country, most everybody who gets this is asymptomatic or mild, and it's not that. And you're not just making a choice for you; you're making a choice for everybody around you, right?
We live in a society. I mean, come on, guys. Like,
Yeah.
I know you want your personal freedoms, but there's some things that we can do. Like you can go get your driver's license, right?
Yep.
You can wear this mask.
Yeah.
You have to
People wear seatbelts. No one. I remember it was a big deal when seatbelts became mandatory, but now people are okay with it, and it saves lives.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the masks are a 1 out of 10 on the effort scale. Like,
they really are.
It's a
opinion,
1 out of 10.
I like masks. Okay, I think they're pretty cool. I think it's an accoutrement that you can have. Well, I enjoy them, frankly.
Yeah, I ordered one from Amazon. It was like a reusable with interchangeable filters and some, you can clean it and all this other business. It's a cool thing. It looks awesome. Makes me look good. My buddy Terrence showed me his, and I went, "Oh, okay, where'd you get that?" He sent me a link. It's $10. I ordered mine, and then I've got three more of them on the way. So for the family, right? We're just gonna do that, and we've also got a big ass bag of the disposable ones in case we need one. We've got them in both cars. They're ready to go, right? And we do it anytime we are outside the house, and unless if I'm doing my run in the it's 6:30 a.m. and it's just me and the dog, I'm probably, and I'm not near anybody. I'm outside. I'm not. If I'm right around in my car and it's just me, I'm not. But the minute I step out of my car, or even if I'm drive through and I'm just going to run down and pick up a prescription, and I'm going to have some sort of contact with someone standing there, I'm going to put one on so I don't breathe outside the car or something. That is a 1 out of 10 on the effort scale, and everybody listening to that can make that a reality and just knock that out, right? All right. What about washing your hands? Good idea or bad idea, doctor?
Great idea.
Great idea. Okay.
So, and actually, some people I think have the misconception of the antibacterial gels and with hand sanitizer
Right.
as a better method. Actually, hand washing is just as good, if not better.
Right.
So think about it. If you're at home, you don't need to overuse your hand sanitizer. You just wash your hands.
Right.
Right.
If you have water available and soap, that's actually a preferred method, because you're actually washing it off. And also, you don't have the gel and alcohol that's dried up on your hands when you're eating or whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But hand washing is vital. I mean, that goes back to early 19th century when they figured out that that's a method that we had a means of transmitting disease. Prior to then, doctors, they would even do surgeries without gloves, never would wash their hands, but something so simple. That's why, as someone said, we as a country expect always these magnificent, grand things to fix this problem, but the fixes to this are fairly simple for the most part.
Yeah.
Away from everybody. Don't meet up with 30,000 other people, until this is managed much more than it is now. And wash your hands and cover your face.
Yeah.
Don't touch your face and eyes. That's the problem. A lot of people inadvertently will touch your face and eyes and nose. That's the real issue why you have to wash your hands, because no matter how hard you try not to touch your face, you invariably will through the course of a day many times.
Many times.
Yeah.
You know what else?
That's a tough one.
Yeah. Cell phone.
Cell phone.
You wash your hands, but don't wash your cell phone. That's something that sticks out to me. I try to alcohol pad my cell phone.
Yeah.
Whenever I will wash my hands.
Yep.
Because otherwise, I'm just gonna touch my phone like 2 seconds anyway.
Yep. All right. So give me. We always ask this. Give me your prediction, Doc, on what types of things in our society is now gone forever. Like
Handshake.
That's one I put forth to MC. Is I think maybe the handshake may be gone, as a greeting. And by the way, Japan, the bow. I'm a fan. Like I'm such a fan of the Japanese because they did all the things that you said. They are the highest density country in Southeast Asia, right? Or in Asia. Tokyo, they are cram packed in there. They socially distance somehow. They masked. They washed hands. They don't shake hands. They bow, right? That's a big thing. And they beat this thing very, very handily. They had very, very few deaths, like 800 in all of Japan. They had a really good response, and they did it through both those things. Everybody masked and everybody social distance, and they basically nailed it. Like they're done. They're kind of done with this pandemic, right?
And they did not lock down ever.
Right? They never locked down.
And there was never a mask mandate. Basically, what the prime minister and the health ministers did and said, these are our reasons why we want you to do this, this, and this. And they were like, that sounds like a good idea. So we're going to trust what you say, and we're going to do it.
Yep.
And so they never shut down. They never had mask mandates. That's kind of ingrained in their society as it is.
Yes.
But they didn't have to shut down.
Right. Never had to do it. So anyway, things that William and I postulated that maybe the handshake is gone from our society. Anything else you think is just now gone? It will never come back.
Sad to say, and I like this, but hugging.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
I'm such a touchy-feely person. I love hugging. I love
dude,
shaking hands is a huge problem for me.
This dude right here, big hugger. He hugs me every time we see each other, and we hug when we go away. Like he's a hugger.
It's a problem for me.
You hugged everybody in that goddamn AGDQ crowd, and you made it like a serpentine lap, and hugged
messing around, right?
And hugged like 231 people on your way out the door. Yeah,
you get sick by the way. So
yeah,
that was
January. That was January. So before it happened, hugging's a good one. Any other things? How about cinemas?
They're not. I don't think they'll be gone, but the way they used to be is gone.
Yeah. Maybe drive-throughs come back.
Yeah, I was just about to say. I think drive-throughs might be a thing.
Drive-throughs, sorry, drive-ins, drive-in movies, right?
Yeah,
drive-in.
Yeah, drive-in.
Drive-in movies. Yeah. That's awesome. Like I think
I'm kind of down. Yeah.
I'm kind of down with the drive-in movie, man.
I think there is drive-ins already.
Yeah, there's a few of them. They are very, very few and far between. But I wouldn't mind seeing those come back. Where a car is a pretty good social distancer, right?
Yeah.
It protects you from yelling something out at another car that you shouldn't have, and probably protects you from an ass beating, right? That you should that you may or may not get. But it's also good if your windows are up. You ain't gonna breathe on anybody, right? You're all you're doing is if you're sneezing or coughing, you're doing it on yourself. So I'm down, man. Yep.
For the young people, I think clubbing is going to be way different. Not like when you and I were younger.
Yeah, going out Going
Yeah.
out, hitting up the club. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see you guys going to clubs, if I'm honest.
Yeah, we had a couple. We had a couple of
Clubs
them.
a lot?
We had a couple of them. Probably me more than Doc, and career choices notwithstanding, it kind of paid off for him. So, all right. What about something that is now going to be a new neat little industry that we wouldn't have seen coming? What's new?
Well, definitely. What do you call it? Ordering online? I think that's going to be
online.
Yeah. Even medicine online, I think, is going to be
delivery.
a hugely popular. Telemedicine.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I've done telemedicine already.
Yep.
Since this has started.
I see that becoming kind of a much bigger kind of percentage of just medical care.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe partitions in schools.
So partitions like
clear partitions.
Mm.
Yeah. I've heard some people getting into that business where you have this kind of looks like basically a plus sign from up top, and it's like a clear acrylic partition that you would put in between desks to separate students.
Yeah, I actually had a dentist appointment in late May. I booked it in November, right? Every 6 months for a list of cleaning, and they never canceled it. And I was expecting it to be canceled because it was May. I think it was early May. It was lockdown. And I said, well, it's not canceled. I'm planning on going in. And they messaged me and said, confirming your appointment, 8 a.m., let's go. And I said, okay. So I show up, and sure enough, mask required at the door. Wipe your hand sanitize. There was a dispenser that basically got in my way. I had to hand sanitize. And then around the receptionist's desk was basically a hockey rink, plexiglass type of thing, where it's the receptionist is not even, it's like a little movie theater tray to slide the stuff underneath, right? Like they're sliding your movie theater ticket underneath the little deal, and it was only this big where they had to be slide the deal, and I had to sign this little thing, and then once they had a clean pens jar and a dirty pens jar, and I had to take a clean pen and sign, and then the dirty pens jar, and then they went away, and I guess they cleaned it, right?
I think there's one other thing they made you do while you were there. Took your temperature.
Yeah, they did the across the forehead. They took my temperature, right? And then I had to. You swear, saw, tell, truth, whole truth, nothing but good, help God. And then they said, have you had any coughing, sneezing, runny nose,
contact with someone?
Have you been anywhere recently with 30,000 other people? No, I haven't. I surely haven't. No.
This is what my dental visit was like. Yeah. They're super, super serious about the protocols.
Yeah, and he said he said, and after I was done, I actually talked with the dentist, and he said, you're probably, this is our first week open. We were going to cancel you, but you're back. You happen to have the right one, and we didn't cancel you. So, all right, man. Well, this has been a thin slice of heaven, Doc. Very, very good.
I hated this. My hopes are crushed. I'm terrified even more. I hope that everyone listening got a little dose of reality about how serious this is. If you didn't think it was serious.
What do I always say? Reality on reality's terms. Like, this is not. Yeah. We're here to give you the exact reality. We don't want to sugarcoat anything. We'll tell you the facts, and we'll give you some recommendations. But we're in it. We're in it. We're doing this thing. And the reality is, no one was trained. We're having to figure it out as we go. Medical community is by and large not prepared. And but here's the great news: is there are examples of we can beat this by society, and it's a collective effort that we beat this, right?
Everybody do
Japan, go Japan! Like, they're awesome, right? Let's do what Japan does, right?
Let's just
let's do that.
I think.
So William, what do you got coming up this week?
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'll be streaming. I've been playing some Escape from Tarkov. I'm playing some Dead by Daylight. I've been playing some Terraria. You can pick me up at 1 p.m. EST, 7 p.m. UK time, 3 a.m. Australian time on those days. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's what I'll be doing.
Awesome. Next, I'm going to do my stuff. I'm going to do a bunch of Factorio this week. We'll do at least one day of me and Ash playing some Terraria because we beat all the mech bosses. We're ready for Plantera. We made some good progress last night, and we're going to do one more. The rest of it's going to be Factorio. And then next, Enough About You is going to be on Saturday, because next Sunday, 1 week from today, I will be leaving on a road trip for a full week. This will be the most vacation I've ever taken in a row off the show. And in 5 years, it's the most vacation I've ever taken. So I'm going to take this vacation pre-Factorio 1.0. 1.0 drops on August 14th. And that week, I'm off all that week. So we're going to be grinding out the Factorio, and we're going to be celebrating 1.0. It's going to be great. So join us for all of that. Thank you very much for all the raiders and the follows that you guys throw down. I've seen them. The alerts are off. They flash up there, but there's no sound that goes off. It's kind of different kind of stream. If you want to catch us, we have enough about you on the YouTube channel below. Go hit that like, subscribe. This episode will be out there. Also, if you want to check us out in your ear holes only, without looking at me or William, you can check it out on Spotify. Also, we have a Twitter account, all that other good stuff, so you can check us out. So thanks for everybody for being here today. So Badger's going to sign us off, and then we're going to raid.
Yeah, we're going to do raid. Just raid. Stay motivated. That's the most important thing. I know times are hard. Things are bad. Life is different. But if you get up every single day and you try your best, you'll be okay.
Oh, wait.
All right,
Doc,
motivated.
you want to leave us with anything first? Recommendations?
Keep on living. Do what you're supposed to, and we'll get through it.
Wash your hands, wear a mask. Okay. Wash your hands, wear a mask. Don't
Blake, stop.
Don't look at anybody.
I know you're loving having him here.
I do.
Keep being awesome, okay? You're already awesome. You're here on Twitch. You're listening to this cast. You're trying to educate yourself. It makes you awesome in my book, okay? And remember, wash your hands.
Wash your hands.